Thank you, Mohammed, to be my husband.
Police are trying to crack the case of the mystery woman found dead by the Humber River.
When you think of Canada, one thing that probably comes to mind is great healthcare. But if you ask any Canadian, we'll tell you that hospitals here are often terribly understaffed. In fact, for the longest time, there was only one neurosurgeon in the entire country who was qualified enough to perform spinal fusions on patients with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Mohammed Shamji. But in December of 2016, all of this changed because, in that very month, Mohammed was thrown behind bars for the brutal murder of his wife, Dr. Elena Fric. In this video, we're going to uncover all the hidden abuse that occurred behind closed doors, the revolting events of the night Elena lost her life, and the downright evil things Mohammed did after the fact. This is the case of Dr. Elena Fric, one of the saddest cases of domestic abuse in all of Canadian history. Before we continue on the video, I just wanted to quickly mention something. One day, I got an email saying that my content had been stolen onto another video, and when I checked it out, yep, someone that goes by Kieran Horror literally just broke up my video about Jiao Jiao and passed it off as their own. At first, I didn't want to call them out on here, but when I mentioned in their comments that they had stolen my content, they just deleted my comment, so yes, I'm being petty. This person also translated my script nearly verbatim into Vietnamese and used that in their video too. They have a much larger channel than mine, so it's quite upsetting to see that they stole my work and pretended it was all them. Unfortunately, YouTube couldn't do much to take the video down, and as of the recording of this video, it's still up. I just wanted to include this little segment here so you guys understand why I had to start watermarking my videos. Yes, I know it's annoying, but it really bothers me when people steal my work. I hope you can understand. Okay, back to the video. On paper, Mohammed and Elena were seen as a brilliant couple in Canada's medical scene, and it's not hard to see why. Mohammed graduated from Yale University with a prestigious master's degree in organic chemistry before moving on to study neurosurgery at the Ottawa Hospital. Meanwhile, Elena, who had been a straight A student all her life, was also completing medical school at the same hospital. There, Mohammed and Elena met in the recreation room, and they started dating shortly after. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the relationship was rocky from the very beginning. You see, Mohammed was considered snobby by many people, and on top of that, he was socially awkward. But even still, he managed to date two women at the same time, one of them being Elena. Even though Elena was aware of the other woman, she was completely consumed by him, and so she continued with the relationship anyway. Elena gave the relationship her all, but Mohammed was distant and apathetic towards her. Reportedly, he missed her graduation and lied that he'd been sick when really he'd gone out for drinks with friends. Eventually, Elena did come to her senses, and at the behest of her parents, she attempted to break things off twice. But each time, Mohammed successfully persuaded her to come back. They honestly should have never gotten married in the first place, but when Elena fell pregnant, marriage was practically inevitable. This was because Mohammed came from a culture where having children outside of wedlock was considered disgraceful, and news of the baby could have brought massive shame on himself and his family. And so, whether they liked it or not, the couple got married in September of 2004. Elena gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Jasmine, but, as you'll soon see, this clearly wasn't enough to change Mohammed's toxic behavior. One day, when Elena was feeding the baby upstairs, Mohammed's relatives had come to visit. When Elena didn't immediately go to the door because she was literally in the middle of feeding her daughter, Mohammed had choked her on the sofa, telling her that it was her duty to greet the guests as a sign of respect. Not long after, on another occasion, things got much worse. Elena and Mohammed had gotten into another argument, but this time, Mohammed had punched her full-on in the face, splitting her lip. He then threatened to throw their baby into the Ottawa River and then pin it all on Elena, insisting that everyone would believe him instead of her. Obviously, this man is a complete psycho, and Elena did the right thing by reporting him to the police, despite his sickening threats. But unfortunately, she was once again caught up in Mohammed's barrage of excuses and pleas, and eventually he convinced her to withdraw the charges. If he were to have a criminal record, Mohammed wouldn't be able to enter the United States to start his PhD, and it might have even caused him to get his medical license revoked. According to Elena's mother, Elena would do anything to avoid jeopardizing Mohammed's career and happiness, and so, in July of 2005, she agreed to sign a peace bond with him. This meant that he would be put on probation for just 12 months, basically a slap on the wrist, then become completely free of any legal consequences. With that, he was able to complete his PhD at Duke University in North Carolina, and to the horror of Elena's relatives, she had followed him there with their daughter as well, citing that if she didn't go, their marriage would be over, and she didn't want that. It was impossible for her friends and family to understand why she was so hell-bent on staying with him. She was educated, supported by family, and certainly not financially dependent on him. Was it really just the love that drew her to him? Well, yes and no. You see, Elena struggled with what most psychologists might describe as an inferiority complex when it came to Mohammed, though I hesitate to use that term in her case, as she was anything but inferior to him. Yet the truth of the matter is that Mohammed was indeed exceptionally intelligent, completing a 5-year PhD in biomedical engineering in just 3.5 years. In addition, while Elena came from a blue-collar family, Mohammed's family were respected members of the medical community, something that carried a lot of prestige. Because of this, Elena often considered herself as nothing compared to him, and she constantly fought to feel worthy of his love. So when she discovered that he cheated once again while doing a fellowship in Calgary, she still didn't leave him, and this was because she didn't want all that she'd invested in the relationship to go to waste. By then, they'd had 2 more children, moved to Toronto, and bought a $1.5 million house. It was a life she had worked hard to build, and walking away from it felt impossible. Meanwhile, Mohammed began crafting carefully curated social media profiles, depicting them as a happy, perfect family. Out of all the posts he's made, this one breaks my heart the most. You can clearly see that Elena's hand is injured, and although Mohammed told Elena's parents that it was because she'd accidentally cut it on a piece of broken glass, there's actually a more disturbing theory behind it. When Elena was elected as a delegate for District 11 of the Ontario Medical Association, her career began to thrive. She was finding her voice again, gaining confidence, and becoming somewhat more independent in her life. This was something Mohammed just couldn't stomach, as this meant he would be losing the dominance he had over her. In what appears to be a fit of jealousy, he likely had been the one to slice her palm open, with the wound so severe that she needed surgery. Yes, there is Mohammed's account that she could have just hurt herself by mistake, but when you look deeper into it, the story doesn't really add up. Elena had told one person she slammed a glass on the counter, injuring herself. Then she told someone else that it happened while she was chopping vegetables. Another friend heard the glass had broken while she was doing the dishes. To my knowledge, Elena didn't have any type of memory issues, so odds are that she was simply making up these stories to cover up for Mohammed. She loved him so much to the point where she was willing to protect him before she protected herself. This must have been absolutely exhausting for her, and you can clearly see it in the picture of her with the injured hand. It's all in the eyes. She appears to be completely worn out, and her smile looks almost forced. Even if I didn't know anything about this case, I would still think that something was up just by looking at her almost pained expression. As it turns out, Elena was in fact reaching the end of her rope. In the fall of 2016, she began seriously considering a divorce and had already retained a lawyer to carry it out. Like he always did, Mohammed panicked and begged her to just give him time to fix things. Out of habit, she agreed, but this time she stated firmly that this would be his last chance, and if he didn't improve in the next 3 months, she would leave him. This was for the sake of both herself and her kids. Even still, she continued to suspect that Mohammed was still cheating on her, and after years of physical and emotional abuse, she slipped into an affair with another married doctor as well. And just like that, it was like a switch flipped in her. This moment in her life made her realize that she was capable of being truly happy again, and that she could lead a full life without Mohammed in it. And so, when Mohammed hadn't changed even a bit in the 3-month time frame like he said he would, Elena made her final decision in November and began the divorce proceedings. She served Mohammed the divorce papers, but he refused to accept the separation. A man so used to control like Mohammed doesn't give it up so easily, and only a couple of days after, he would prove just how far he was willing to go to stay in control. During the hours between November 30th and December 1st, another argument erupted, just like so many before it, but this one didn't de-escalate. This time, Mohammed lost control completely in a way that even Elena knew was out of the ordinary. Earlier that evening, Elena had called her mother, who warned her to get out while she still could, but Elena only assured her that Mohammed wouldn't do anything too drastic. And that very same evening, she would make another call, dialing 611. Investigators later believe she had actually been trying to call 911, but missed the button by just a millimeter. After that point, things would only take a turn for the worse within Mohammed and Elena's bedroom. Their eldest daughter, Jasmine, who was just 11 years old at the time, witnessed part of the harrowing crime that occurred. From the other side of the bedroom wall, she heard her mother scream, once and then again. At first, Jasmine stayed frozen, covering herself under her blanket, afraid of what she already knew, afraid that if she moved, she might be next. Eventually, when her mother's screaming stopped, Jasmine slowly walked towards her parents' bedroom. Peeking inside, she saw her father on his knees on the far side of the bed. He was hunched over something she couldn't quite see. When she asked what was going on, he looked up, frantic and disheveled, before simply telling her to go back to her room. And she did. At that very moment, she had just experienced the final moments of her mother's life. What Mohammed did next was all the more disturbing. He forced Elena's already mangled body into a suitcase, and, considering the fact that the suitcase was much smaller in size than an average woman's body, he would have had to break her bones in order to get her to fit. After this, he wheeled the suitcase out to the car and drove aimlessly along Highway 50, before eventually he found a bridge situated right above the Humber River. He tossed the suitcase over the bridge before driving back home, hoping the river would carry the suitcase far enough down that no one would find it. But his wicked plan wouldn't work out. The suitcase landed on the bank of Kleinberg, not far from the water's edge. The very next afternoon, it was spotted at around 3 p.m. when a couple from the area were out walking to check their mail. As they passed the bridge, the suitcase below caught their eye. Upon looking at it, they felt like something wasn't right. It looked strangely overstuffed, and they were suspicious of its contents, so they called the police. When authorities arrived and pulled the suitcase to shore, what they found was absolutely shocking. Inside was the body of a woman who had been badly beaten, with her face swollen beyond recognition. She was barefoot, still wearing pajamas, and nearly all her hair had been savagely hacked off, as if to further dehumanize her. It was clear that she had been a victim of something personal, violent, and rage-filled. The body was sent for forensic examination, and shortly after, DNA results would confirm what the investigators had suspected. The woman in the suitcase was Elena Fric. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered a broken neck, fractured ribs, and had been asphyxiated. While investigators began working around the clock to uncover who would carry out such a barbaric act on this woman, Mohammed was already spinning up a cover story and laying the groundwork for his escape. After the murder, Mohammed continued with his life like normal. He took the kids to school, performed life-altering surgeries, and even sent a phony text to Elena's phone, saying, "Good morning. Not sure where you are. I guess I'll get the kids ready and take them to school. Please call." When Elena's mother called Mohammed to ask about Elena's whereabouts, he gave a sketchy explanation, telling her that Elena had supposedly left during the night with a suitcase to go be with her secret boyfriend. It was a story that didn't sit right with anyone, because Elena would never leave her children like that, especially not without at least saying goodbye. Suspicious, Elena's mother called the Shamji's neighbors, and one of them walked over to peek into the garage. Elena's Honda Pilot was still parked inside. This information was more than enough for Elena's parents to pack their bags immediately and make their way to Toronto. They let themselves into the home, only to be greeted by a sinister stillness in the house. 2 rugs from the main floor had strangely gone missing. Despite this, Elena's mom proceeded to make breakfast for her grandchildren, all of whom were unusually quiet. Upstairs, Mohammed remained holed up in his bedroom, talking to someone on the phone. Elena's mother heard him say, "Her parents are here." Moments later, Mohammed casually strolled into the kitchen and said, "So you're the ones who called the police." Then, as if he hadn't just brutally murdered his wife in that very same house, he added, "Are there any more of those crepes?" But what he didn't know was that things were about to fall apart rapidly for him. On Saturday, police closed in, They had finally gathered enough evidence to consider Mohammed as the prime suspect in Elena's murder. Mohammed and his brother had been spotted traveling west through Mississauga, making pit stops here and there, plotting a route of escape. At one point, they stopped at a coffee shop, where a surveillance team tracked them down. Mohammed and his brother were meeting with a man in a suit, likely to be legal counsel. Authorities had reasonable grounds to fear that he was attempting to flee the country, so they didn't waste any time, and at 8 p.m., plainclothes officers calmly approached his table, and at last, Mohammed was placed in handcuffs and arrested for the first-degree murder of his wife, Elena Fric Shamji. Despite his initial plea of innocence, the evidence was overwhelming. There was the DNA evidence, his past instances of abuse, and a suspiciously rushed transfer of over $640,000 to his lawyer's trust account. As these details came to light in the public eye, so did Mohammed's carefully constructed double life. His patients, many of whom suffered from conditions like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, were left in complete disbelief. They described him as the best doctor they'd ever had, praising his impeccable bedside manner. The irony here is haunting. A man who had once brought comfort and healing at the bedside had taken the life of his wife at her very own bedside. His patients, who had trusted him with their most delicate operations, were suddenly now without a surgeon.
How the hell you spell chauffeur? Chauffeur. Ooh, fancy pants, Rich McGee over here.
Initially, Mohammed faced a charge of first-degree murder, the most serious accusation in the Canadian legal system, and one which carried the harshest penalty. To this, he completely denied everything, saying he was innocent. However, he ended up taking a plea deal after a lengthy trial, pleading guilty to second-degree murder. This was intended to spare his daughter Jasmine from testifying in front of the court. He was sentenced to life in prison, but with this case being in Canada, he also had the possibility of parole after 14 years, meaning he could potentially walk free as early as 2030. For Elena's family, his conviction was something, but not enough.
There was no penalty that this court could give him that will ever justify what Mo has done to Elena, to us, and especially to the children.
During sentencing, Mohammed was given a chance to speak. He addressed the court, offering remorse so flimsy you could practically see right through it. He said, "Your Honor, I have killed my wife. There are no words to express the remorse and shame I have." Then he turned to address his children, 2 of whom were in the courtroom, and he said, "I reflect back that night I should have killed myself and not Elena. That would have been the only justice." His daughter Jasmine didn't believe a word of it. Later, she would say,
I just remember staring at him. I just didn't believe that he was actually talking to me and saying, that stuff. As the apology, I don't think he was really sorry.
Elena's funeral was held on December 17th, 2016, at St. Francis Church in Windsor, where she was grieved deeply. In the end, Elena's parents made the difficult but admirable decision to uproot their lives and move into the Shamji home so that the children could maintain what little routine they were used to. One aspect of this story that utterly shattered my heart was when one morning, the family heard Elena's 3-year-old son laughing alone in his room. When they went upstairs to check on him, he was standing on his bed, having recently woken up from a nap, and, giggling, he said, "Mommy was kissing me." He had been dreaming. This case is enough to send a clear message to anyone out there experiencing domestic violence. Get out while you can. It doesn't matter if your abuser is a criminal or a respected neurosurgeon. Once the violence starts, they're equally capable of committing the unthinkable. I hope Elena is finally at peace, and I wish her relatives all the best. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Here's something else that might interest you.